Hello and welcome to Movie RX, where I prescribe entertainment one movie at a time. I am your host, Dr. Benjamin. I am a doctor in the same way that Doc Ock is a doctor, only in fiction. Are you giving me a gratuitous laugh like
no,
Gwen
you're
did?
such a dork.
It wasn't funny. It was just so quiet.
No, it was good. It's good.
Yeah.
Doc Ock, only in fiction.
Right.
And
so,
on your podcast.
As you hear, once again, in Movie RX Studio, today I bring back my sister and one half of the Round Table Mindset podcast. It's Jamie. So welcome, Jamie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Today we're actually doing a movie that's super special to me. Actually, it's the first in an animated series, a different version of my favorite superhero. Today we're talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Spider-Man's your favorite?
Yeah.
Oh, I always thought it was Superman.
Oh, don't you even.
I'm just kidding.
I'm kidding.
Although I didn't know it was Spider-Man. I actually thought it was Batman.
No. Spider-Man speaks to all geeks.
Geek Nation Unite.
Pretty much. So, as far as the basic movie info on this one, this Sony Pictures animation was released in 2018, directed by 3 people, most of which I can pronounce their name. There's Peter Ramsey, Rodney Rothman, and then sorry, Bob Persichetti. I don't know. I think
that's rough.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably. It stars Shamik Moore, Jake Johnson, Haley Steinfeld. The list goes on and on with the amount of people that are voicing characters in this. I mean, Nick Cage,
Chris Pine,
Lily Tomlin. There's tons going on in this as far as voice talent goes. So the Amazon description, I'm doing Amazon today, Jamie. Amazon description. Oh, well, I think it's Amazon. I'm pretty sure this is from Amazon. Introduces Brooklyn teen Miles Morales and the limitless possibilities of the Spider-Verse, where more than one can wear the mask.
Oh. No, it's still a little lackluster, but yeah, no, I need more.
Okay. All right.
This will just always be my thing. Maybe I'll start writing them for you.
You'll just complain. Okay. So, first off, I kind of want to do the, talking about the technical stuff, your initial movie impression as far as, cinematography, music, soundtrack, those kind of things. Tell me how you took this movie in.
Well, I don't know. Your guests probably have no idea, but you know how much I loathe animated films.
Yes.
Typically. So when you texted me about this one and I saw that it was a cartoon, I was like, blah. Mm-hmm. But what I loved about this, from the word go, it's like different animation.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was watching a live action comic book. Like it was like 2D, but with depth or something. It was really interesting and caught my attention right away. But there were also times where it's like you were looking at real people too. It was really well done.
Mm-hmm.
And the story kept me involved. It wasn't, like the typical Disney arch, Right. So that was good. But the animation really caught my attention off the top. I thought that was really interesting.
As far as the animation, as far as the animation goes, it's like they did something a little different where they have um, where they had like things in the background. They had multiple images of that thing, um, kind of staggered apart from each other. And when you look at whatever the focus is, that gives the effect of having that three-dimensional look by blurring what's in, like, in the background of your focus.
Huh.
So it was actually a new technique that they were trying, and I think they achieved what they were going for. I mean, it
Is that
was,
so? Are you saying that was the first time it had been used? Because I mean, there really was something different about.
yeah, they if my source is correct, they trailblazed that type of technology in animated filmmaking.
It was
So
very cool, and it was notable. Like, it was a notable difference for me.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty solid. I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of hated it at first,
Oh,
but
you and
I
I seem to
actually,
have the opposite opinion about movies all the time.
right.
I loved it. I thought it was cool.
See, and for me, initially viewing it, I hated it. I couldn't stand that jerkiness and all of that stuff. And I don't know if you know this about me. I know that I've told more people more recently, but um claymation actually makes me sick to my stomach.
Oh,
I'm not sure why, but like, like when your kids were way younger and they'd watch Chicken Run and I'd chicken run my ass out of there. That
well,
was
and
why.
you always hated Nightmare Before Christmas, which I always thought was
Yeah.
such a great fun movie. But that
Same
makes
thing
sense.
with I mean, any of those that have that claymation in it, it really it makes me sick to my stomach. I'm not sure what it is, if it's like a frame rate thing or whatever, but I have heard that that is a thing. So
Huh.
with that in mind, like, I mean, this has some flavor of claymation. It wasn't enough to keep me away though. So
Well, and it wasn't claymation.
right. But yeah, I mean, this movie was kind of off my radar because of the animation. The reason why I did give this movie a chance and decide to go watch this movie was it was actually because of a friend of mine who's passed. Um, his name is Alex, and he had once suggested that I do this as that I do a review of this movie on my YouTube channel, my old YouTube. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with YouTube, and that was one of the things that he had suggested was doing a movie review for this movie.
Hmm.
So if it hadn't been for Alex, I wouldn't have seen this. So thanks, Alex. This movie is in the Dr. Ben top 10.
So, when was this movie made?
2018.
2018. Okay.
Yeah, it's been around a minute.
Oh, it's at the top of the little sheet you gave me.
Yeah,
Thanks for that.
that's why I send show notes. Next, I usually kind of talk about the characters, and really, like, as much as I'd love to, there's not enough time to talk about all the characters in this movie. There are so many, and
Spider Pig.
yeah, so many of them would deserve their own 10 minutes to talk about. But I kind of split them up a little bit. With this one, I start off with Peter Parker and Peter B. Parker. Now, the reason I wanted to put those together is because they are not the same. I mean, they're the same, just not quite. I like how like one is kind of referred to as a different shaped one, a different shaped Spider-Man, a softer Spider-Man, that kind of thing.
Like a squishy Spider Man.
Right. Um, and that of course, of all of the people to do voices for Spider-Man, Jake Johnson is the one who does Hobo Spider-Man, like.
Hobo Spider Man. I loved that. Hobo Spider Man.
um but Peter Parker being done by Chris Pine, in contrast to that, besides Chris Pine being, Captain Kirk, in a lot of his other roles, he's kind of the good guy, the upstanding dude, and so it's really like it's no surprise. But I really liked the idea of those two, um, of Peter B. Parker standing and seeing himself that's not himself and saying it was like looking in a mirror, and it really wasn't. I don't know. I just love the Peter B. Parker thing, and the voice acting was astounding.
Personally, Peter B. Parker, Hobo Spider-Man, was the much cooler version, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and better looking. The 5 o'clock shadow, and the eyebrows with the messy hair. It's a whole thing.
Okay, I guess so.
For a cartoon,
Oh geez, I'm not gonna get started on that. Up next, we have Gwen Stacy.
Right.
Gwen Stacy, Haley Steinfeld, perfect. I mean, she did great. I'm not entirely certain, but I think this might have been the first time that character was actually done in any sort of animation, because there's been other on the horizon of things that are Marvel. They've had all kinds of different Gwen Stacy things. Like there was Gwen Pool. There was a lot of t-shirts. Jake's got a t-shirt for that.
See, I feel like I feel the need to be super transparent in that I don't know a ton about any of the Spider-Verse other than the movies that I've seen, right? Because I'm not like a comic book person. It's not my jam. As a matter of fact, I think that's why the animation in this felt so comic booky, because of the jerkiness, because I think that's kind of how it is when you read a comic book. It's like boom, 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 like all these different things, right? So I didn't know anything about Spider-Gwen until she showed up on Fortnite. So
right.
I mean, it was kind of new to me, and it was kind of cool to see. Like, I loved when she appeared the first time in the movie, because then it was like, oh, hey, there she is. Like,
right.
So I don't know these characters super well, other than this movie and the other franchise movies.
The thing that I really got a kick out of Spider-Gwen, you're not much of a comic book person, so Gwen Stacy is one of Peter Parker's girlfriends.
Oh, see, I just know MJ.
Yeah, there's another one, Gwen Stacy, and her dad,
post MJ.
It's separate. Well, every comic book for every character has multiple versions of that story.
See, that's why comic books confuse the crap out of me, because
it's like there's the Amazing Spider-Man, and there's Spider-Man, and then there's Spider-Man 2099, and there's all kinds of different iterations of these stories. But Gwen
Stacy is the girlfriend, does that mean MJ doesn't exist because it's a whole different franchise? Or
she does, just in a different way. I think at one point, I think it goes from Gwen Stacy to Mary Jane. Like Gwen Stacy is first, and then MJ comes later.
I'm not gonna lie, MJ is not my favorite, mostly because of who played MJ in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man series.
That's fine. Like, I'm okay with it. Gwen Stacy is way better than
I think
MJ
so too.
anyway.
I think so too.
But anyway, Gwen Stacy was Spider-Man's girlfriend. And her dad was a police captain. Well, he gets killed in the line of duty while working with Spider-Man. Before he dies, he tells Peter, "You're going to make enemies, and you need to leave Gwen out of it." Of course, what Captain Stacy said would happen happened. It was a really super emotional part of the comic books and all of that stuff.
Was that in a live action movie?
The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I sobbed like a child in the theater when I saw that.
I think I remember that because you made me watch that one too.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah. Well, reverse the roles.
Very heartbreaking.
Gwen Stacy, I don't know if you caught this in the origin story that she gave, but Gwen Stacy, her best friend was Peter Parker.
Yeah.
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 So it was just a role reversal there. It was kind of weird.
It was a little weird.
Next character is Uncle Aaron. I love Uncle Aaron. Uncle Aaron is probably one of my favorite parts of this movie. Well, it's pretty much Miles' family that really shines for me. But Uncle Aaron, I really loved Uncle Aaron. I
had a really hard time with Uncle Aaron. I liked Uncle Aaron, and then when Uncle Aaron was the bad guy. That made me really sad.
Yeah, it obviously made Miles pretty sad too. Like even with that though, like him being a bad guy doesn't take away the good things that he did for Miles. He was the guy that was there for Miles when he didn't feel like any of the rest of his family was there.
Well, what an interesting statement, because it's like the moral of the story. Like, one thing doesn't have to define you, right? Like,
Right.
you know, him being a bad guy, it didn't define his whole person.
Right.
But that was really sad. Made me a little mad too.
Oh yeah. Next characters I have down are Rio Morales and Jefferson Davis, Miles' parents. Now you'll notice something on there. They have different last names. Rio Morales and Jefferson Davis.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie. As I was watching the movie, I was wondering where the Morales came from.
Yeah. And I'll actually get to that.
Okay. Thanks.
Miles, voiced by Shamik Moore. The guy did fantastic. I believed 100% that he was Miles Morales, playing a character well below his actual age, and he put a voice to what became my favorite superhero. After this movie, Miles Morales was my favorite Spider-Man. After seeing it, I saw the truth that the best Spider-Men come from Brooklyn. So,
Yeah.
if I have any listeners in New York from Queens, I'm sorry. Brooklyn Spider-Man is better. I'm just saying.
Well, plus you listen to good music. I mean, that helps too.
Right. So as far as like some of the talking points that I had for this, the first one was actually the first one that you had on your list. It was kind of the focus for the creators of the movie as well, like in their marketing and stuff like that. It was that Miles really is anybody. Miles is any kid. He's every kid. He fumbles his way through songs without knowing the lyrics. His parents have different last names, which you have that with kids all the time now. His parents are multicultural, which is far more common than it used to be. Doesn't have a ton of friends that he hangs out with. He's kind of awkward and all that stuff. He is every kid, which is one of the things that I really appreciate about Miles.
I'm curious because I don't know enough about the franchise as a whole.
Mhm.
Was this developed just for the movie? Is Miles a character that was developed for this movie, or were there...
Miles Morales preceded this movie?
Here's what I think is so interesting and so great is that, I think we saw, like, even with the new Little Mermaid movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think what I love about this is how important representation is, and that kids can see people that look like them and that sound like them and that have families like them on the big screen too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that is one of the things that I really loved about this movie is, I've never seen a black Spider-Man. And I loved that. I loved that kid looked like millions of other kids in the country, and they all got to see themselves on the big screen, and they got to see themselves as Spider-Man. And I think that was one of the things that was the coolest thing. And, I'm not going to lie, there was this part of me when I saw, before I saw the movie and I saw the concept, like I saw all the advertisements and stuff. It's not like I didn't know this movie existed before I watched it, but it reminds me of, do you remember the end of Malcolm X? The very, very end where they bring it to like modern day, and he has all of these kids and all of these people of different races and cultures and religions, and they all sit there and they say, I'm Malcolm X. I'm Malcolm X.
Yeah.
It was like, I'm Spider-Man. I'm Spider-Man. I loved that about this. That was kind of a key for me.
That was a big part of the marketing campaign too. Again, anybody could be Spider-Man, and so they encouraged people to draw themselves as Spider-Man. You'd get kids from everywhere. Like, I mean, it's not hard for a kid to grab a pencil and a piece of paper
Yeah.
You don't have to be rich for that to happen. And I mean, in some of the comics, some of the Spider-Man comics that came forward from that, some of them were heartbreaking, some of them were super inspiring. But all of them were important to somebody, which was really, really crazy awesome. And it all started with Miles. I mean,
Yeah.
there was another Spider-Man that was not white that came before Miles. It was Miguel O'Hara. Um, he's Spider-Man 2099. So
Oh.
he's Spider-Man in 2099. Um,
Well, and this movie kind of had everything, right? I mean,
mhm,
we had Spider Girl, we
mhm,
we had Spider Gwen, we had Hobo Spider Man. Like
mhm.
we busted all kinds of barriers with race and socioeconomic status and all kinds of
Right.
things. And I love that. I love that, to be able to let a kid see themselves as a superhero, regardless of where they come from. I mean, isn't that the point?
The point of comic books for so long was so that kids could choose their reality for at least just a moment.
Right. Well, and honestly, like I said when we were kind of talking about this before, if you take away the superpowers, the superhero story,
Hmm.
I think that that's a big piece of it. Is um, I, I loved the empowerment of, you can do great things,
Hmm.
and you're made to do great things, and go find the great things that you're gonna do.
Right.
Um, you can set that bar wherever you want it to be. Just be the best person you can. You know what I mean? And I don't know. If you know me at all, you know that that's kind of my mantra, right? Like, just
Right.
be the best human you can be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's real easy, you know.
Yeah.
Um, now, I mean, I did kind of want to talk about um, some of the things that I like. I mean, we've kind of been talking about it already, but some of the things that I appreciate about Miles, and one of the things was that I really appreciate that he's more modern. You know, the multicultural parents and all of that stuff. It reminds me of kids that I see every day. Another thing is there was a 2019 comic about Miles having Morales as a last name instead of Davis,
Yeah.
and Rio. They are married. Jefferson and Rio are married. Jefferson, he explains to Miles that he has his mother's last name because Jefferson's dad was physically abusive, and that he was just a really bad person. He wanted to detach from that. You almost get this little heartbreaking insight into the person that Jefferson is. Like, does that change your perspective on the character? Like,
Yeah.
it really adds to everything that you thought about him. I pulled up this comic book probably about a year ago, and then I saw that, and it was it was weird, like to suddenly see that there was purpose behind why, and it wasn't because his parents weren't married. It was something else completely.
Something that just occurred to me is how Miles's dad is kind of a superhero, in
Hmm.
his job, in his work, in his family.
Hmm.
And yeah. Oh, that makes me want to cry a little bit. Like,
Doesn't it?
now Miles is too. It's just,
It's right in the feels, like
yeah. Yeah.
it's rough.
Oh,
The origin stories in this movie are great. I mean, with all the different spider people, spider things, I guess, because some of them are not human. Um,
in true Spider-Man fashion. And what I absolutely loved about the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies was the humor, like the little quick things that when I was way younger, I didn't pick up as much, but that was still funny. Like, I still liked it. And then
mhm,
as I got older, it became more funny because you actually understood what they were talking about.
right.
I kind of, in true Spider-Man fashion, that was totally in this movie too. You know what I mean? Like, when they're all, when all the Spider-Mans were up on the ceiling,
Mhm.
like trying to hide from the
From the
roommate.
roommate.
I about died. I'm just like, or at the very end when he slapped a sticker somewhere where his dad could never see it, so he wouldn't
Right.
make him take it down. Like those little things were definitely in this movie, and I appreciated that it still felt Spider-Man to me,
Yeah.
because of the humor and the punchy little
One-liners.
one-liners. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that you could really consider it a Spider-Man without one-liners. I mean,
No,
that's just what
no.
it is. And the cheesier the better.
It's
The
it's the
cheesier, the
mark
more
of Spider-Man.
Spider-Man-y. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, as unique as all of the origin stories were, what I really loved is that they all had their parallels. Like the Spider-Gwen, the death that made her change so much was what was her best friend. With Penny Parker, it was her dad, and instead of Uncle Ben, it was Uncle Aaron. And Uncle Aaron got to see him as a hero before he was gone. It's all still unique. It's changed enough to be just for that character, but it's not so different that it's like foreign. Another thing that I really appreciated about this movie was the soundtrack.
Mhm.
And as far as the soundtrack is concerned, I mean, the music was fun, like, all the different hip hop artists and all that stuff. It was really awesome. But can I just say that Prowler has the world's most terrifying leitmotif in all of moviedom? That screaming elephant sound that comes in as soon as he.
Served its purpose.
Right. This one was one that you had kind of pointed out was really neat. The expectations.
Yeah.
Tell me what you feel about the expectations.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes back to Miles as every kid, right? And I think that what was interesting was thinking back to the fact that he was in middle school, and remembering not just like parenting my kids through middle school, but also being in middle school. I mean, that's really the time that we're like figuring out who we are and things like that.
Right.
I guess as a parent, I didn't feel like I was placing a whole lot of expectations on my kids, like unreasonable expectations, the normal stuff, like, be a good human being and go to school and, work hard and that kind of thing. But I remember my kids often like pushing off the things that they felt like I was placing on them as expectations.
Hmm.
Um, so it was a good space for me to really kind of think through that and see it in cartoon form on the big screen.
Right.
um yeah, and quite honestly, I'm still kind of processing this movie because there was so much in it, there were so many good things in it, but it really did make me think about that time with my kids and how much of a struggle that was,
Hmm.
and how hard it was to get through that because I didn't recognize the expectations, and I think that they perceived some that weren't there too, um just based on like I think that happens in our families regardless. I think that we live in a family culture where we have values and ethics, and we those kind of things are just naturally placed on us because it's part of our family and it's how we were raised or what we were brought up to believe and things like that. And so um yeah. And I think that kind of hit home for me when they were throwing up their art in the subway
In the
tunnels.
subway. Yeah.
Yeah, when I didn't see the little no expectation until he looked at it later.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay. Now I'm starting to like." It was just kind of piecing together for me, and that felt like a pretty big theme. Like he was really trying to figure out, okay, how does this stuff fit
Hmm.
with who I want to be and what I want to do? Because here he wants to do graffiti art, which is against the law, and his
Hmm.
dad's a police officer.
Right.
Like
Right.
so, and I feel like he identified so much with Uncle Aaron too, that and Uncle Aaron and Dad didn't get along. So,
Hmm.
I think he was really just kind of straddling, trying to figure out like which way am I going to go? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that leads into the next talking point really well. I put the dynamic family just because I like to be fun. But the family dynamic, like,
Hmm.
there is so much in that, between between Jefferson and Aaron.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly they were they were best of friends. And I mean, they did all of those things together, all of those things that Miles is doing and is still doing with his uncle.
Mm-hmm.
He took over for Jefferson in that way,
Yeah.
and you can sense the sadness out of Aaron for it. Feeling like he lost a brother.
Yep.
It's different on Jefferson's side, though. You don't feel that sense of loss. Instead, you feel more of a judgment. You feel more judgment out of what Jefferson has to say and what he shows of himself about that stuff. You really get the sense that Jefferson is the older brother here.
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Well, the whole birth order thing, like, I'm going to stick this straight and narrow. I'm going to, do all the things and, that sort of thing. And then little Brohan is just going to do it his own way. And that's not always the way it should be done. So,
right.
Although I definitely get a real sense of where that came from as we find out that, Uncle Aaron's the bad guy.
Right.
So clearly, Uncle Aaron had made some pretty rough choices that weren't exactly leading him down a positive path.
Yeah. Well, and that path went straight into going head to head with a small army of spider people.
Spider people.
Yeah, I mean he was after Miles, and he didn't know that it was Miles that he was after, but that was who he wanted. Like Peter B. Parker, he didn't care about, Spider-Ham, he didn't care about Spider-Man Noir, he didn't care about him.
Is it really Spider-Ham?
Yeah, it's Spider-Ham.
I thought it was Spider-Pig.
Spider-Pig is Simpsons crap.
That's fantastic. Spider-Ham.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that aside, one thing that I'm really confused by in the movie is how, like, Miles lifted his mask so Uncle Aaron could see him.
Mm-hmm.
And then just before Uncle Aaron is mortally wounded, he pulled Miles's mask back down like he didn't want to see that he was about to hurt his nephew.
I think that might have been the intention, was that he was trapped. I mean, he was put into a place where he had to kill his nephew because that was what he was there to do. He was there to kill a Spider-Man. And then he finds out that Spider-Man is his nephew.
I just had this thought too, that maybe was he pulling the mask down to say, all right, kid, you can do this? Like, was it an affirmation of his superhero-dom?
Or he says, and there are times where when he says it to him, even if it's just a voiceover, it's heartbreaking. He tells him, you're the best of us, Miles. Like, you go out and you be the best of us.
Oh, I'm going to cry again. Cartoons making me cry pisses me off. I think that's why I hate cartoon movies.
Yeah, some of them really can. Pixar's really good at that.
Don't even get me started. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, and all of that leads right into a huge part of this story, and that's the death of Uncle Aaron. Ultimately, he decides he's not going to hurt his nephew, and Kingpin wants nothing of it, and puts a bullet through Aaron for it. Jefferson is out patrolling.
Gets a call for the disturbance.
Right. And Miles picks up Uncle Aaron and takes off and goes into an alleyway somewhere, and lays him down. And of course, the cop that's called to the disturbance is none other than Jefferson. Of course, Jeff already has a thing against Spider-Man. When he sees that it's a Spider-Man he finds a random spider person next to what is your deal?
Spider person just makes me giggle. Let's not forget Spider-Ham. There were spider things, okay? There were lots of spider beings.
Okay. So he sees a random spider kid zip away from his brother's body. in the alleyway. And of course, he assumes that it was Spider-Man that did it. He's going to get him, you know. Instead of him getting him, what I really like is that the next thing that Jefferson does is go to the school. There's the really great scene where he's in there with the other spider people, and they're trying to decide whether he can go along, and ultimately decide that he can't. And he gets a knock at the door, and it's Jefferson.
Which he can't answer.
Yeah, he can't answer the door at all. I mean, it almost looked like he was trying
Right.
at first, and then he didn't. So Jefferson took it as Miles just being upset with him.
Well, you get a real sense. I mean, to me, I got this real sense that Miles and Jefferson probably had a really good relationship. And in this time, like so many parents and their young teenagers, all through, older teenagers, it's difficult because this person that you've known for 12 years of their life suddenly is not the same person. They're growing and they're changing, and they have opinions that are separate from ours, and parenting shifts a lot in that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was all super obvious. Like when he dropped him off at school and was like, I'm sorry, I loved that. When he was like, I love you, and he didn't say anything. He's like, yeah, I
love
know.
you, Dad. I love you, Dad. Dad, I love you.
Copy that. I died because I was like, I remember dropping my kids off at middle school and being like, love you, Boo Bear. And it would drive them crazy. Because I think that's us as parents still trying to have that connection that we always had, that connection from when they were little that we were able to, just make them smile and connect. And I feel like this is where Jefferson really understood that his relationship with his son has to shift. It has to change a little bit. He has to shift a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I really loved that scene where he was, telling him, hey, you have a spark and it's amazing and you're going to go do great things with it, and just kind of released him to go do great things with his spark, because I feel like he was really trying to tamper that and channel that into the direction he felt it needed to go. And that was some of the rift that I think they were experiencing. But yeah.
I only know because you've told me, but sharing it on the podcast is something that's, a lot of that is where the medicine is. It's the sediment that's in the liquid and not at the bottom of the glass, like Dad always told us.
Yeah.
It's the stuff that makes you better. No, I know that this scene specifically talked to you.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, Miles is every kid, and Miles is my kid. Miles is my son. And I can't tell you how many times that was the conversation. And, I think as he was, especially in this stage, and just given our family dynamic, my nuclear, me and my kids dynamic, and how my family came together, both of my kids, I think, had to go through this space where they had to figure out who they're going to be. They have biological family, and then they have our adopted family, and trying to figure out, like, what does this mean, and where do I come from, and what does that mean? And I saw both of my kids struggle in that. And I think for both of them, I think Miles hits close to home, because Miles not just reminds me of my son, but also looks like my son and acts like
Right.
my son, and all of that. And it was just like,
Hey.
yes, all the one-liner, and he's super creative, and he loves his music, and all of that stuff. And that speech that Jefferson gave at the door was so often the same thing that I told my kid on a regular basis. You are made for great things, and you have something special.
Right.
And just just wanting so badly for him to be able to harness that and do amazing things with it, like he is so more than capable of doing, and how scared I was that it might not turn out that way,
Right.
um, that I wasn't, and not because of him, but because I wasn't doing it right, that I
Yeah.
wasn't doing enough to support him and to do that. And so, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I got to see that scene twice as I was prepping for this, maybe even 3 times as I was prepping for this podcast. And I ugly cried the first time because I'm just like, oh, So, um, it was, I think it almost validated for me. And I'll tell you what, that shift in parenting was so hard. It was hard to recognize that I needed that I
Hmm.
needed to do that shifting. But also seeing my kids shift and change into, mini emerging adults was really hard for me because, oh man, y- because it signifies the last end of the trek, right? Like that tail end of where I have influence and support and the ability to my ability to guide was coming to an end.
Right.
So yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome. Now, for me, I had a little bit of a not quite not quite so deep connection for me, but I mean, it did kind of remind me of a conversation that Dad and I didn't have. Um,
What?
okay, so
Now you're getting punchy like Spider-Man.
well, okay, so the a lot of what was in this conversation, it's stuff that kind of came through for Dad and I in a different way. We didn't actually have the conversation though. Like it was just one of those things that like we just knew. We just knew that things had changed. We were just going to accept each other for what we knew each other to be, and that it was okay. Like, and I mean, and that gives a whole different look on the expectations thing and all of that. Like, Dad and I butt heads a lot back then.
I was
With
gonna
the
say
expectation.
butthead.
Yeah, I mean it was except butted sounds weird. I don't know. I don't like it. Um,
Butthead.
but yeah, we did butt heads quite a bit on expectations and things like that. And again, we didn't really have a conversation, but we just knew I was who I was going to be, and he learned that accepting that was important. And I knew that he was the person that he always had been, and that I had to respect that it wasn't easy for him to change. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you've kind of even pointed out to me, I had never, don't get me wrong, I saw that relationship a tiny bit in this, but I guess I had never really sat back and thought, huh, I bet, I bet dad had to go through some of that too, like,
Oh yeah.
because
But
there really was a space where I had to let go and understand that, you know, I I cannot control everything that's going to happen to my kids. And I have to accept that they're going to make choices. They're going to have opinions. They're going to move in directions that I don't get a control or have a say in. And I have to be okay with that because the relationship is more important than, those decisions.
right.
So I guess in this instance, I never thought about our parents having to do that at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Um, it was quite confrontational to me in that way. I mean, all that stuff was in the back. Like it was well before I saw this movie and all of that stuff, but it was still it it was still something that was able to bring it to the now and make me go, God, I really did put Dad through a whole lot of shit, like,
You
but
know, I keep thinking that someday my kids are going to be like, "Oh, mom." I can't believe I did that because I've had that conversation with Dad on numerous occasions.
Right.
Like, I am so sorry for every stupid, dumb thing I ever said and did. I was an idiot, and now I'm an adult, and I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. You were right, and I was wrong.
Right.
Like, and I can tell you, ironically, and I don't know how this happened so fast, but recently one of my kiddos came to me and said, "Oh, Mom, that was a really dumb thing that I did. You were right." And again, I got this tiny little insight of what it must have been like for Dad when I told him that the first time that day about, all the things at college time that I did against what he said. And it broke my heart a little bit to hear her say that
Right.
now that I
Well,
just outed which kid it was. But
especially when you're trying to give them, especially when you're trying to avoid the "I told you so."
oh, yeah, because
Like,
that wasn't at all like I never want the I told you so.
right.
But it's like, oh, look at all the heartache that you've been through. And that
Right.
was what I was trying to help you avoid. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it kind of, yeah, it kind of hurts my heart.
So the leap of faith, that is, there is a movement of people, of filmmakers um and special effects people and things like that that are trying to get it officially named the greatest shot in history. It's not because of the actual shot itself as much as it is uh all of the emotion and the planning and the story that leads up to it,
Mhm.
and how it capitalizes everything. um and I for one, I agree. Like, it's really amazing how they tied everything together in just that short period of time. What's up, danger?
Yeah.
Like, it all comes together. It's really powerful, really strong, good stuff.
And I'll tell you what, I think mm, the reason that was so very impactful to me was because it was like it took every single person in his community. He had a small community, right?
Hmm.
And it took every single one of them speaking empowering messages to him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
For him to be able to take that leap of faith to step out and become Spider-Man, he needed every single one of those people to just help him believe in himself. You know what I mean?
I mean, kind of in the notes that I had taken for myself was that the faith that powered that leap actually came from Jefferson.
Mhm.
He put faith in Miles, and he may have before, like, he may have felt that faith in his son, but it wasn't until he told him.
Yep.
And then it was like, well, if I have my dad, then I have everything.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna make me ugly cry again.
I don't know. I really love that scene, and I do. If there's a petition or something that somebody knows about, let me know. I will put my name on it.
Move.org. Let's do it.
Right. Um, that whole, that Jefferson's faith in his son was what gave him the strength to do it, echoes again in the final battle with Kingpin,
Mhm.
when he needed to get up just that one more time.
Yep.
And he looks over and he sees his dad, get up, Spider-Man. That wasn't even his son that he knows
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
like, but no, I mean, it's just good stuff. I don't know. I dig.
Well, and you know, just to throw it over to the platform in my podcast for a second, like how important it is for, I mean, I think us as moms,
Hmm.
we are, I think most moms do a lot of encouraging. They do a lot of that, speaking, uh, empowerment into our kids,
Hmm.
and I'm it's not like I've always been amazing at it, but I think it's easy for me to go there.
Hmm.
Especially as I have grown as a person myself. How valuable is it? And how different does it hit even for me when I think about those times that my dad that our dad said to me, "Good job, kid."
Right.
Just those 3 words, "Good job,
Hmm.
kid." And I mean, that still like gives me goosebumps thinking about those times that, he recognized me in that way. You know what I mean?
Right.
And how important it is for dads to just be able to do that for their kids. It's so necessary because they need that message. Plus, I think, there's that whole like, we won't go into this like in depth, but like toxic masculinity and how, you know, our society doesn't always allow men to go there. You know what I mean?
Right.
To get a little mushy and say, hey, not only am I really proud of you because you did the right thing, but I love you and you're important to me and I believe in you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And our kids need to hear that. They need to hear it from both parents. It's super important.
Absolutely. And honestly, not just our kids. I've been a pretty strong proponent for a while now that it's a good thing to just tell people that they're doing a good job when you see it. Anything like you're at a gas station, and the guy behind the counter is super friendly and he's got a lot of energy and it doesn't matter what the people come up to the counter like,
Right. Yep.
and hey man, you do a good job. I just want you to know that I see the job you do and you do it well. Even if it's a guy at a gas station, that can really make somebody's day and it can make the difference.
And how easy to just be a good human being. Like,
Right.
oh,
It's a really cheap way, super inexpensive way to make somebody else's day. I'm a pretty big proponent of that.
who knew Spider-Man was going to get mushy?
Right.
I love it.
We had kind of talked about it a little bit with Jeff being at the door. What was your active ingredient in this? Was that pretty well it?
Yeah, I think that reminder of really speaking life into other people, you know what I mean? And not, I'm done actively parenting my children, but even as an adult, nothing means more to me than when dad tells me he's proud of me, or you know, when he tells me I did a good job or he loves me or whatever, that still is, I think that's a need that never goes away. And I think that that's not just from a parent to a kid or from a brother to a sister. I think that that is something that we all need and that we can all give each other, is to say, hey, I recognize you. I see you. I choose you. You are valuable and I care for you. And I think that is, I think that kind of rings through in all of this, that I believe in you is something that we should be telling each other. It's something that, you know, it should come from our bosses and it should come from our coworkers and it should come from, you know,
The
the
people that
people,
work for us.
the people that we're
The
close to.
yeah.
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 I don't know. I spend more time. There are some weeks that I spend more time with my coworkers than I spend with my family. So,
Right.
like goodness, those are people that support me and encourage me just as much as my family does sometimes. So,
Sometimes. Of course, that's also the benefit to working in a support job.
yeah, that's kind of true.
So
I do kind of get to cheat a little because we work in that kind of field, but
right.
yeah.
No, the active ingredient for me was when I watched this, it was in mid 2020. I had this awful thing with getting into a job, and I'd be at a job for a long time. I would stay well past the toxicity, and I wasn't even doing a job that was really very fulfilling.
Oh, you found meaning in it though, which is
I
one
well,
of the
I
coolest things
tried.
about you.
I
It's one of
really
the coolest
tried.
things about you. You always try to find meaning in those things.
I try to learn something from
Yeah.
everything, and I did. But I was so gun shy about jumping into a career where others would have to trust me to help them, uh, and like, and in every way, I am the square block trying to go into the round, the round peg hole, and this movie, especially because of that, you can wear the mask. And if you don't believe it,
If you didn't believe it before, I hope you do now.
right. And that kind of allowed me to get out of my own way and do work that I'm really good at, because anyone can wear the mask.
Oh, you're gonna make me ugly cry again. Damn it, Ben.
But yeah, I'm not gonna make you talk about all your stuff, because I mean, people know when I tag your stuff in it. So
Roundtable Mindset Podcast. Join us. We're coming back in a couple weeks. So excited. Thanks.
alrighty. Now, if you have an idea for a movie, or if you would like to challenge me to find a therapeutic purpose in a movie, or if you'd like to be on the show, send an email to contact@movie-rx.com, or you can call or text 402-519-5790. Thank you all for listening, and remember, this movie does not treat, cure, or prevent any disease, and we'll see you at the next appointment.